a lot of today's information is going to be information, some that you may have heard before, and some of it might be new. Either way, it is an important message, and you're going to learn some tools, some strategies, some tips, and everything to learn to move forward if you're experiencing some symptoms. So we're going to move to the next slide, and thank you to VIATRIS for their sponsorship of the MS Monthly Mental Wellness Chat. We are so incredibly thankful. And also thank you to MS Views and News, because without them, we would not have started this mental wellness chat 3 years ago during COVID, and it is still going on, and it's still connecting people, and it is still helping many. So thank you, Beatrice. So introductions, and before we get started, I am Jessica Thomas. I am the Director of Patient Education for the Neuroendocrine Tumor Research Foundation. Now, you don't need to know that, but I think I needed just to get that off of my system, because I keep deviating to wanting to tell you that. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I have almost 2 years or 2 decades of experience helping people live well with MS, and in the arena of emotional and mental wellness. And how I got into this is because I live with MS, and I was diagnosed with MS about 20 years ago, and I found my adjustment to having MS to be very difficult and really laced with a lot of anxiety, and I didn't know who I could talk to, and I needed to talk to someone, and I needed to process. So for whatever brings you here, I want you to know that we are thankful that you are here. So why do we want to talk about our healthcare team, talk to your healthcare team about your moods? Well, because emotional issues tend to be very underreported, and emotional issues, moods, depression, etc., is very common with MS. It's actually very comorbid, and things like mood changes, depression, anxiety can impact your quality of life, and it's treatable. So again, this will not replace any talk that you should have with your doctor. And we'll move on to the next slide. We have Sherry from Michigan, and then we have Mary from Southwest Idaho. The cold is tough. Oh my goodness, you guys have gotten a lot of cold. So I just shared a little bit about why our moods matter with MS, and it's because MS is a hard disease to live with, and there's a lot of reasons why paying attention to our moods are important. But treating your moods and mood changes, it's very doable with MS. And so, again, if you are experiencing any symptoms of depression or anxiety, I want to encourage you to talk to your doctor. We'll move on. So we're going to talk about 2 things related to kind of how to stray away from depression, how to stay a step ahead. We're going to talk a little bit about the why it's important to be proactive. And then we're going to talk about the how, like how are some, what are some things that I can do? What are some things? How can I stray from depression? How can I do some things that will help me? Now, these are not going to be a one size fits all. So when we get into the actual strategies, I want you to know that some are going to connect with you and some are not going to connect with you. And that's okay, because that's how intervention works. And thank you so much, Sherry. I got a note from her. So, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the why. So, why should we be proactive about depression and be proactive with managing depression? We'll move on. Because we want to provide early intervention, prevention, escalation, and then we want to prevent reoccurrence. So for early intervention, if we're proactive, we can treat depression much sooner. And if we can treat the depression much sooner, the better chances are is that you are going to have a better response to treatment, and it will help it from getting worse. Now, I know when I was first diagnosed with MS, I had a lot of anxiety, and learning how to treat my anxiety took a long time, and because it took therapeutic interventions, and it also took medication, and getting used to that medication, because the first medication I tried didn't work for me. And that's very common with people. And I only share my experience because I know it echoes a lot of people's other experiences as well. So when we're proactive with our depressive symptoms, and we can acknowledge them, we can get intervention sooner. And even if you are having kind of a relapse in depressive symptoms, or if you're noticing that maybe your medicine is flatlined and you've noticed the depressive symptoms have increased or escalated a little bit, then by proactively talking to your doctor about it, or a counselor or a therapist, is going to help you to get on the right track to manage it. I know, as my time as a therapist, I had patients before that they would know that they actually had some seasonal changes in their depression. And sometimes it was related to literally seasonal depression when it gets more cold and gray outside as the winter goes on. It can, for many different reasons, seasonal depression can increase. But I also had people that when it got warmer outside, and because MS and heat sometimes don't go hand in hand, just like cold and pain doesn't go hand in hand sometimes. Then there's people's symptoms would exacerbate, and because that they didn't do as much, or they struggled, and so knowing your body, knowing what's going on, knowing your moods, knowing any changes that you're having, all of that's really important, so we can really get you as much intervention as possible, and we can keep it from getting worse, because as you know, untreated anxiety or untreated depression is so much worse than treated depression or treated anxiety. And then, of course, we want to prevent a reoccurrence, because sometimes disease, even like depression can reoccur. So you might have a period of time where you don't have it in your life, and then some stressors surface and it comes back. And so preventing the reoccurrence of it is really important as well. We're going to move on. So we also want to be proactive because we want you to have a good quality of life. And I love when you guys are chiming in, so I'm going to stop here for a second. So someone asked me, as an opinion, what is a good medicine to try after they've been on a medication for 3 years? So I always say that this is a good conversation to have with your doctor. So if you've been taking the same medicine, say for 10 years or 12 years, or in my case, I think 15 years, I've managed kind of okay on the same medication at the same dosage. But for many people, they can flatline a little bit. And so it means that the medication is not as effective as you would want that medication to be, or you're feeling like it's not working as well. Maybe stressors are high. There could be a lot of different reasons. And I think usually a mix of one, talking with your doctor or psychiatrist, and then also saying, what else can I do to supplement? And we're going to be talking about things that you can do to help supplement medications as well, and things that you can do in your control. But I always say that's a really good conversation to have with your doctor, because they're going to know what to, if this medicine worked well for you, then and it's not any longer that there might be this medicine over here. So your doctor is going to be the one that you want to talk to. So improved quality of life and reducing impact on daily functioning. So when our moods are low, when we are experiencing depression or increased anxiety, I'll just join anxiety in here, we can see that it impacts our relationships, it impacts our work life, it impacts our day-to-day things that we do. And so if we can proactively manage some of these symptoms, then that really helps to reduce some of the interruptions that you're going to have in your day-to-day life. And it's overall going to improve your quality of life, because our mind and our mental health is a big part of our overall wellness. Okay, we have Clarissa here from Texas. She is new. I am so glad that you're here, and I know it's really weird. She said, I can't see the chat section, just FYI. The way that this chat is set up, you guys can't see each other's, and I wish you could, but it's just not the platform and the way that this has worked. So I can see everything that you guys post, and I will post, I will verbally say what you post, unless you tell me not to. And if you don't want me to, you have to say, don't read this in the beginning before you say anything. So just a reminder for the group. But Clarissa, we are so happy that you're here. Another thing about being proactive with depression is it enhances resilience, because guess what? life is going to happen. It's going to be stressful. There's going to be things that happen. And if you are already doing proactive things to manage your mood and depression, what is going to happen is that you are going to be able to manage life stressors and things that that are going to happen anyway. So it already gives you the tools. And then it's also empowering. When you're doing something to take care of yourself, you feel more in charge. And so sometimes that can be why after a while of going to counseling, a couple weeks, you feel kind of like powerful. Or if you've decided to take a new treatment for your MS, you feel powerful. Like in that moment, it's scary sometimes, but you also feel empowered because you're doing something about it. So that's two other reasons to be proactive. So we'll move on to our next slide. And your emotional well-being has a direct correlation with your physical health. Now, I cannot say that if everything was perfect for you emotionally, that your MS would be perfect. That's not fair to say. And I would say that that's not very true. But what I can say is that when stress is high and things are not going well and you're dealing with depression, anxiety, but more or less stress too, when those things are not going well, you can see the direct correlation to your disease, how your symptoms might flare up a little bit. You might have a pseudo flare, or you might notice that you have an MS relapse. Every MS relapse I've had in my life can directly correlate to a series of really stressful events that were going on. And I know that's the case for you. We have David from the Bahamas. I always love to see you, David. Thanks for saying hi. And so so taking care of your mental health and depressive symptoms is going to have a positive impact on your physical health. It's going to do nothing but support the things that you want to do to live well with MS. And then it's also by being proactive, you're encouraging your support systems. And we cannot do this alone. And I know there's a couple of people on the mental wellness chat sometimes that struggle with building a support system, and it's hard. Some people have very big support systems. Some people have very small support systems. I'd say my support system's actually relatively small, but many people that I've worked with have very big ones. But when you're proactive about your emotional health and depression and talk about it, it encourages support and some level of support from people. And then it reduces stigma. So that is probably one of the most important reasons too. It reduces stigma. So I'm going to be brave here, and I won't read your names, but I'm just going to ask, who here has a comorbid diagnosis of depression? I will not say your name. But I just imagine that there are a couple people that do. And so you can feel free to put that in. I know that's a very brave thing, but I just thought it might help other people. As I shared earlier, I live with pretty well managed anxiety, but it wasn't always managed. And my anxiety is actually managed with a depression medication. So I always say sometimes depression can be a cousin of anxiety. So we have Deb here from West Melbourne, Florida. Thank you. Sherry said it's hard with very small support. I'm not going to name names now, but we have someone that says I do. I have someone that says anxiety with a mixed mood disorder. Someone said they didn't hear me. I was just allowing a safe place, and I will not read your name. But if you're living with depression or anxiety or any mental health stuff, I just thought it would be nice to ask, if you're living with it, feel free to say yes. And so that way people can see that other people are dealing with it. But I'm not going to read your name with this question, so I want you to know that. Someone said, what she's dealing with it, and she's had a hard time with medications. She's been kind of resistant to the SSRIs. We have someone that says, they have a small support system, barely. So there's, and we have someone that's looking into a physician, it looks like. So it can be common. I would say a good percentage of people are living with that live with MS live with a level of depression or anxiety or a mood disorder, and that's nothing wrong. It's a part sometimes of living with disease, and it's not always just MS. It can be other diseases as well. That's very similar. And we have someone here that's been medicated for almost 2 decades for depression, and found a medicine that worked really well for them. So now we're going to move on to the hows. So we talked about why should we be proactive, and that's good. Why should we be proactive? We should be proactive because that's taking care of us. But also, when we're feeling depressed, it's hard because we don't feel like we're at our best, and so it can be really hard to take steps to do things. So I'm going to show you a little something. I put it out today. So this is oh, you're not going to be able to see it. Darn. Okay, maybe you can see it. It says sparkle and shine. It's this little frame. I normally don't have it out on my desk. But I think that is, it's hard. When you feel like you're sparkling, you're shining, and everything's together, it's easy to do. But when you're dealing with a level of depression or mood changes, it's hard to do some of these things. So we're going to talk about the how. And so we'll move on to our next slide. And so this is going to be a little bit different. So I don't have chat box questions intermixed, but you guys are actually being pretty good just as we're talking. I'm going to say this is an open chat box. And what I mean by that is as I go through some of these examples, if you see something that's working for you or that you've been doing it and it's worked, let us know. Or if we get through the end of the house and I didn't mention something that has been working for you as a proactive tool or as a tool for your depression, feel free to share it. Again, if you don't want me to read your name, just don't say my name, and then tell me whatever you want to tell me, because then I will read to the group, because this is what it is we are a community here together and we're sharing resources. So we'll move on to our next slide. So therapy and counseling, that's my first how. And if you are in therapy or if you attend therapy, please feel free to say yes. If you need advice on how to find a therapist, type that in, and I can answer that a little bit, or I'll just proactively answer that myself. So therapy and counseling. So when you engage in psychotherapy, you're going to learn skills such as cognitive behavioral therapy or talk therapy, and this is going to help you to change some negative thinking patterns. A lot of depression is embedded with cognitive distortions and things that we tell ourselves that sometimes are not true, and sometimes we have to learn how to reframe that. And so therapy and counseling can be a safe place to process things, to allow yourself to grieve and to work through things, but it also can give you some practical tools on how to actually work through your thinking patterns and how to reframe. So we have a couple people here that do counseling and telehealth. And we, one time, I had someone here that says the therapy counseling here is very ridiculous. There are some community counseling programs that you can look at. I also would recommend call the National MS Society. They have some MS nurse navigators or MS navigators that can help you to find counseling resources as well. We have someone here that goes twice a month. And she says, I probably need it more, but insurance won't allow. But I'm so glad you get to go twice a month. And then someone said it was if it was feasible. Yeah, I think it's important finding the right counselor and finding the right match for you. And there's a lot of different strategies, to try to find someone that would be a good fit for you. And there are some community resources. We did have someone on here last month that said that they went to doing teletherapy and they actually were able to avoid copays. And so I'm not saying that is the case for everybody, because it's all individualized with insurance, but that might be a resource. So therapy and counseling is kind of one of the first recommendations. And now we're going to go on to our second recommendation, which is medication. So sometimes this is a necessary evil. It's not always required, but sometimes medication can help. And, medication is really going to rebalance your neurotransmitters in your brain. And that can make a big difference, because when you're going through depression or depressive symptoms, there's a lot of imbalance in our thinking, and those things that we can do to reframe with cognitive behavioral therapy, but then also medications can help make some changes too. So I always say that there's not a one size fits all. And I know for myself, when I was working on my anxiety, that medication just alone wasn't effective. I needed to do cognitive behavioral therapy as well, and that is the case with many people. But medication is something that that can be very helpful, and to look at the level of your quality of life. If you're struggling internally with taking a medication, to be able to feel less depressed may really improve your quality of life, and it may be a big game changer. And I do want to normalize that we do have people that take medication for depression, and definitely on the chat as well. So we have Linda that says she gets a zero copay if she stays on telehealth, and in person has a copay. Linda, thank you. I thought that was you from last time. And then we had Joe that says, does insurance pay for therapy? Most healthcare insurance plans do pay for therapy, even Medicare, Medicaid, private insurance. I was a therapist prior to the role that I'm doing right now. And so prior to that, I took all healthcare insurances as well. And I did find that sometimes that the with telehealth, the copay was waived, but that was during COVID. But it's good to know that it's continued for you, Linda. And then we have someone that is kind of trying to figure out the right balance for medication. And that is such a tricky thing, and that is a hard thing. And so one of the things that I recommend during, if you're dealing with that, is also consulting with a therapist at the same time. I worked with many patients that were going through the trials of trying medications that worked right, and not medicines are not one size fits all. I will never share medication names, but the very first medicine I ever tried, I felt like a zombie, and it was a medicine to treat depression. But then I know 30 people easily that have taken that medicine and have done beautifully. And so it's all about our body chemistry and what is the best fit for us. So it's frustrating to go through taking a new medication and starting something new, and being patient with it to see if it works, and then if it doesn't work, trying the balance of another one. But I hope that you can hang in there. We have David who just started Tecfidera, a new MS MS medication, so he's new to taking that. And we have someone that takes 2 medications that work. So sometimes it is finding the right balance. And I know it can be a frustrating thing, but it can be a game changer when you find the right balance. But I do recommend that sometimes it's helpful to also see a counselor at the same time. So that way you can talk to someone and find those other little strategies that might help lighten things a little bit while you're working on finding the right fit. So the next slide is going to be something I talk about a lot: regular exercise. When you're incorporating regular physical activity into your life as a routine, there's going to be a lot of positive effects on your mood and overall well-being. Now, here's the deal: is MS is so different from person to person, and so there's definitely modifications that you may need to do. There's some people with MS don't need any modifications. I know I do, depending on the time of the year. And so I know from all the work I've done with people that exercise just has to look different from all of us. But when we exercise, we are activating our neurotransmitters, and we are getting dopamine, we are getting endorphins, and we're getting serotonin. A lot of healthy chemicals are kind of running through our system when that happens. And that small walk or a swim at the pool. I know it's really cold outside, so it's hard to imagine swimming right now. Or even small exercises can make a big difference, even if it's a 5-minute walk. One time I worked with someone who they weeded in their garden, and I know that requires bending down and stuff. There is a different situation, but even that felt good to her. And so finding the right exercise, if you need to start it, or you want to start an exercise program, but you feel scared to start an exercise program, see if you can see a physical therapist. And MS Views and News has Gretchen Holly, that is a physical therapist that does programs here, and she actually would be a great person to see. And then there's also, I believe, chair yoga, I believe, or chair Pilates, or maybe both. So, but either way, when you do regular exercise, it helps your mood. I know on the days that I exercise, I immediately feel better. And so we have Linda here says that she needs to do more. She says she walks her dog twice a day and not very far, and I stay on the block. But you probably feel great when you do walk your dog. And so I want to applaud you for what you do. And you can probably challenge yourself to do a little bit more, but also applaud yourself for what you do. And then we have Carol that uses Aquafit or Gym. Seeing people or alone, it's her therapy. That is so great. And then David talked with breathing. We'll get to that too, David. So we're going to move on. So healthy lifestyle, it's pretty vague, right? So when you're focusing on a balanced diet, ensuring kind of you're getting the proper nutrition to support both your physical and your mental health, that can help a little bit too. It really can. And here's my simple explanation of this. When you eat junk, you feel like junk often, and when you eat well, you feel better. And so there's a lot in play. If you don't eat as well, your digestive system might not process as well. You're gonna feel bloated. You might not feel good physically, but when you eat better, you feel better. And so that's just another proactive thing that you can do. Now, and you can do small things to feel better as well. And there is a book. I'm trying to see if I have it where it's close by, and I don't think. Oh no, I do. Hold on one second. Okay. So this book right here, I think, is an excellent book. I have to get used to you can't see what I'm doing. Okay, I'm just going to read it. It's from Michael Pollan, and it's called Food Rules. And I learned about this book at an MS program, and it's such a common sense, easy book on healthy eating, and it's not. It's just very easy reading, and it's not complicated. It's not hard. It's not a special diet. It's just little small things you can do to integrate eating a little bit healthier. So then we have the next one, which would be adequate sleep. And before I do that, I'm gonna hold on one second. So Dion says she does Pilates, and there's exercise classes on YouTube from various sources, and that is so true. You can find a lot of resources on YouTube. And we have Clarissa that also does dry needling, and that helps with pain management and moods. That is good to know. Janine, we're going to talk a little bit about meditation. And also, Deborah said wellness checkups should be or should include a blood panel, and it's helped her to see if her iron's low or if there's other warnings. That is so true. And that is something that your healthcare provider should be doing as well, and that should be a part of just your regular seeing your primary care doctor. So for adequate sleep, prioritizing good sleep hygiene and consistent sleep is really important for each night. And what you're going to find is that when you sleep better, you emotionally feel better and you're more resilient. Telling you just to sleep better is not very helpful, though, I know. And often sleep is very disruptive and disrupted for people. And I always say if you're having trouble sleeping, there are lots of resources you can look up on sleep hygiene, and some may disrupt things that you're doing. So, for example, for good sleep hygiene, you don't watch TV right before bed. For good sleep hygiene, you're going to maintain kind of a very pretty significant routine to kind of help you kind of prepare to sleep. And so Carol said she can feel more emotional when she has a lack of sleep. Definitely a mood changer. Absolutely. And Julie wanted to know the Food Rules book is by Michael Pollan, Pollan. Michael Pollan, Pollan. And so when we don't have adequate sleep, we definitely can notice mood changes. And so what can we do to help prioritize sleep? And sometimes it's looking at kind of all the patterns of the things that are going on in our life. Sometimes a counselor can help you do this. I did a lot of work around this because I think that mental health and sleep go hand in hand. And sometimes we can find kind of what's the sleep disruptors, because we, as often that people might be thinking or might have thoughts when they're, going to bed and like need to learn how to stop their mind. But there's other things that we can do to increase better sleep. And so one might be having a cool room, limiting light, that which, often is limiting the TV. And so finding the right things to help support good sleep. And hold on, I got another person. Very good. So Deborah mentioned that she was coughing at night, but it turned out she had sleep apnea. And she has a CPAP machine now, and that's a big improvement in her sleep quality, not sleeping in the daytime, and it's improved fatigue. And that is a really good example. So, talking to your healthcare provider if you're not sleeping well, because you might be able to get a sleep study and kind of see, is there anything, is it an emotional thing, or is there a physical thing going on? And a sleep study can absolutely, or should be able to start to uncover that as well. And if you see a neurologist, chances are you have a really good connection to probably a sleep center or someone that can do a sleep study. We're going to move on to our next slide. So before I get started on this next slide, Teresa says, I have profound hearing loss since I was little, and it's depressing as having MS. Are they connected? So some hearing loss can be connected to MS, but it is my understanding that's a little bit more on the rare side. But what I can say is, and you know this by experience, is that it can be very, very sad and frustrating to experience hearing loss, and I see that in while this is something it sounds like you've dealt with your whole life, I see this when I work with the aging population and the changes that they've experienced. But when you have your hearing impacted and you're not able to participate in the same way, it can be very challenging. There's been lots of progress, of course, but sometimes MS and hearing can be related. But it's not super common, but I have heard that before, and it's always good to ask your doctor as well. So for mindfulness and meditation, learning to practice mindfulness and meditation techniques is a proactive thing that you can do. So how do you do this? For mindfulness, one of the things that I do is I work really hard to be present in the moment that I'm in when I can. And especially if I'm feeling overwhelmed, if I work on being present, it's really helpful. So one of the things that I like to do is sort of think about my senses. And I think about, it's called grounding. And there's actually, and I want to go up in the thing on the chat. We had someone last time that shared something. It was called glimpsing, I believe. That was really helpful. If you can type back in what that was called, if it was glimpsing and the definition, but that was really helpful last time. And she said something today, and I just can't find it real quick in the chat. But for grounding, you're going to be so in the moment. You're thinking about, your senses, what is it that you can see right now? What is it that you can hear? I love to do this outside, especially. What are is there, anything that you can touch? What do you feel? Not literally, but like with your hands, your senses. And is there anything that you taste? So it's thinking about like all of those senses. And that can kind of help you to kind of pull you from being outside of your head, or in your head to kind of outside of the space of where you are. So grounding, and then also some people love grounding where they literally take their shoes off and they go outside and they just put their feet on the ground. Um, and so let's see. So we have someone here that shared that they also have hearing loss and sensory overload, and they got sound protectors or enhancers, and that helped, and it was covered by insurance, and it's called Sound Gear. And then we have someone else that said during one of their MS attacks that they went deaf in their right ear, and luckily it all came back. So there you learned already that you're not alone in that. So Carol says that she does pain management by stretching and just relaxing with spa music and practicing being in the moment. We have Deborah that does Tai Chi and Qigong, focusing on physical movement without strenuous poses like a headstand, and those are online too. Carol says staying present. And Sherry said, glimmering, immensely thinking about the good things throughout the day. Yeah, thank you so much for saying that because it's reminding me of that sparkle and shine a little bit. And so I think the glimmering is actually a really great, easy thing that we can do. And it's essentially kind of practicing either gratitude or the things that are good. And I'm going to show you something that's very vulnerable here because I do practice the things that I talk about with you. So for example, you're not going to be able to see this, again, my planner, but the very bottom of my planner, for every day, I write down the things that kind of made me happy or that I was thankful for. And so one, like for example, earlier this week, I had a hot bath and I was just happy because that was a really nice way to decompress. And then I watched a funny movie clip and I wrote that down. Today I had lunch with my husband and that was a special thing. But and then the other day I was playing with silly photos on AI, and that was it was silly, but it was fun. And so but recording it is really important to me. So glimmering. So, really immensely kind of concentrating and thinking about the good things throughout your day. That's something that is a very good resource as well. And I want you to remember glimmering. So for mindfulness and meditation, that's another way that you can be proactive, and I think it's to allow yourself, there's lots of tools and strategies, online things that can help you with meditation. Sometimes for me, meditation is just kind of allowing myself to just focus on what I'm listening to, which might be really nothing, not an audiobook, nothing that's kind of, stimulating, really just stopping and listening and closing my eyes. I love to do that on the porch because that allows me to really focus. So we're going to move on to our next. So support system. This is, one way that we can be proactive and we can, encourage our support system to be involved to build a strong support system. And again, I want to remind you that some people have really big support systems. I have a very small support system, but allowing yourself to share how you're feeling is important. The other day, I was able to connect with a coworker and just say, my mood has been really like a little bit lower this week, and it's a lot of the gray weather. It's really cold, and et cetera. And it was really nice. Like while I was not engaging her to be a big part of my support system, I was kind of saying, it's been kind of hard, a little bit, and she was able to connect with that as well. So setting realistic goals. This is very, very helpful. When you can set realistic goals, or what I'd say is if you have a big goal to kind of like chop it down, that can be really helpful because when you're dealing with any level of depression, overwhelm, anxiety, those things feel like massive and they can be barriers in themselves. So when you break things down to smaller chunks, it can be helpful. There was a time during COVID, and I was working with a lot of patients that were living with MS and depression at that time. And we looked at, really small things like, what is something that, so instead of going to take a big walk, we talked about walking outside to the mailbox. We talked about doing small little chunks of things instead of big, big things, to kind of work their way up into doing things. But I felt like for many people it was easier to be realistic with what they could do at the time and meeting themselves where they were and where they were at. And that doesn't mean not challenging themselves, because all those small things were still challenging. If you think about it, if you've experienced depression before, you can understand how hard it is to take a shower. And literally, maybe with MS too, but like literally, like emotionally, sometimes it's really easy things to many people can feel like a really big deal. So setting small goals and really avoiding setting unrealistic expectations. We have Julie here says, I could see what you're showing. If you can see the chat box, let me know, because or if you can't see what I'm showing, let me know. And we have Carol that says she needs a larger support system. I think, that's sometimes, we feel like we need more and that is okay. And sometimes, what we have is enough. It's just kind of finding what's right for you. Limiting stressors. So again, stress is a part of life. It is a really challenging thing because it's always going to be here. But if you can identify and manage some of the stressors in your life and simplifying as much as you can and having healthy boundaries, and we've done programs on boundaries, and I can talk about them, not today, but having healthy boundaries, like just finding ways to eliminate some of the chaos and stress in your life. And I know that it's impossible to not have any. Like I have my own, you have your own, but what little things can you do to help kind of eliminate some of the things that are unnecessary? Then the next one is having hobbies and activities. So we have I was kind of waiting for some people to we can go forward, I think, 2 more to hobbies and activities. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So when you're engaging in activities that you enjoy, or you're exploring new hobbies, you have really a sense of fulfillment and pleasure. And so I'm going to show you, I brought some things that I wanted to show. So, sorry. Okay, so this is what I would say is, so I crocheted this. It's not that incredible, but it was made with like a baby hat kind of thing. I need to find someone to give it to. But this was a keeping my mind busy kind of activity. And so I found something that was kind of inexpensive to do and found a cheap way to do it. But I always like to have things on hand, like little hobbies and things that I can do. We had Joe here that said coloring books, which is amazing. And that is such a great thing. I also have like a little bit of like watercolor paper. I took a painting class that was super inexpensive. It was $25 last summer, and that really helped me as well. But having little things, little hobbies to engage in, coloring books are great, and coloring pencils, having them kind of nearby, having little activities to kind of keep your mind busy. And I always think if you're teaching yourself something small, like maybe it's to crochet. I have not learned how to crochet where you can just like crochet without the loom. I have to use the loom. So if you do that, that's amazing. But oh, thank you. Julie could see the book I showed. Thank you so much, Julie. Joe also said Scrabble, dice games. It's something that I have out. We play together, not on our phones. That is so good. Linda says she belongs to 2 singing classes. David said dominoes. I taught myself how to play solitaire this year, and that was so exciting and silly. but something really fun. I wanted to learn how to do something, so doing something like that. And then Sherry said MS Focus has a free Zoom art class on Mondays. Yeah, they absolutely do. So finding some hobbies, some activities that kind of like busy your mind, but then also that you enjoy, and you get like a little bit of a sense of accomplishment, a little bit of dopamine from doing it, a little sense of relaxation or calm, and finding things. So there can be free things out there to do. There can be very low cost things, and then I like to have just little things around the house, that are kind of will encourage. So if I things have been very stressful and I need to relax, I might have like a little bit of coloring pencils and some of my coloring books out, and by my table, so that way when I'm watching TV, I'll kind of engage in that, and it's always like such a good feeling. So I want you to be safe with your sunlight exposure, but I can tell you that when you have some sunlight exposure, it's good for you. It's good for vitamin D. It's good for serotonin, and it's good to have. And often in January, in the winter months, we don't get enough exposure to the sun. And so, but when we have exposure to the sun, it helps your mood. So one of the things I wanted to share, and I did not plug it in because I don't want to blind us. But during COVID, I got this therapy grade light from Amazon, and it maybe was like, it was under $20 at the time, and I got it for myself, but I also got it to show people how easy and portable and small it could be that you could get. But if you're struggling with getting sunlight exposure, light therapy can be helpful. I'm going to say, ask your doctor about it. But it is, I know it's complimentary and it does help many people. Sherry said that she got one for Christmas. And Janine says, I like burning wood and putting flowers on it and coloring it with pencils. That was really cool. If you can ever, Janine, show me a picture or email MS News and News a picture of it, I'll share it at our Mental Wellness chat. And Joe says we have 3 lights. So there you go. I've known personally and professionally that lights have been therapeutic. Lights are very helpful for people. And if you don't get outside often, or you don't have access to sunlight, I highly encourage it. We'll move on to the next slide. And journaling. So journaling is incredibly helpful, and it can be a proactive thing. When you're keeping a journal, it allows you to express and really reflect on your thoughts and your emotions. And this can provide also some opportunity to have insight. Some people are, I would highly recommend, journaling if it's therapeutic to you. And for some people it is. For me, I love to plan. So I make sure that I capture kind of my, the little gratitudes and things, and that's something that I would journal. But journaling allows a safe place to process. We have Deborah that said it's good to have your vitamin D levels checked, and that is so true. People with MS often do not absorb vitamin D as adequately as some of other population. You can talk to your MS specialist about it. But it's important to get your D3 levels checked, and because D3, your vitamin D is important as well. So, and David said, just saying I'm from the Bahamas, so you're probably getting a lot of good sun. And so Sherry said we only get an average of 165 days of sunshine a year. So there you go. Like, some people don't get as much. I have a lot of family and people I care about that live up north, and this time of year is really hard because they don't get the sun, the Carolina blue skies that I get most of the time too. And so it's important. So if you can't get that access to sunlight, how can you get it? And a therapeutic light might be helpful for you as well. So journaling. Journaling can be very therapeutic. It's another strategy. It's another proactive thing that you can do. We'll move on. Seeking professional help. Again, this is a proactive thing you can do. You can talk to your doctor, and it's okay. I make a point for my MS appointments talking to my doctor about my mood and how things are going, because that impacted my my own disease course early on. And while it's managed, I can still have ebbs and flows in it. So I want to make sure that I'm talking about it and just normalizing it. And I normalize that for you too, that to talk with your doctor. It's okay to integrate that as a part of your MS wellness checkup or with your primary care doctor. We have Deborah that says light therapy for seasonal affective disorder. And so true that the therapeutic light can be very helpful for seasonal affective disorder, and very proactive to have it ahead of time. And I've had patients before that I worked with that that would put it out and start using it as soon as the time change happened, and they would be proactive about it. They wouldn't wait till their depressive or seasonal affective disorder would pick up. They kind of knew that was just part of what they needed to do. So we'll move on to our next slide. Mind-body techniques. So when you're exploring mind-body techniques like yoga or Tai Chi, and we had someone else that mentioned another technique, but this can promote relaxation and reduce stress. So this does nothing but support your wellness. So so when you're thinking about all these strategies that I've shared, I want to make sure that you just know that these can all, be very proactive things to do that can help you with any of your mood challenges. If you don't have mood challenges, they're still therapeutic, still very helpful. We're going to move on. So I wanted to ask you, what is your takeaway from tonight's program, just out of curiosity? What is something that you would like to integrate? I think it's important when we think about and kind of reflect. It was fun actually to pull out some of these things to share with you, because it reminded me of some things and reinforced some things that I personally wanted to do. So let me see if we've got anybody. You guys are so good because I put you on the spot. Carol said glimmering. I think I love the name of that. Glimmering. That's a really great thing. Let's see if we have any more. Oh, and Clarissa says, I appreciate you all doing this. And that is so true. I thank you to MS Views and News. Thank you to our sponsors, and thank you to you guys, because everyone shows up and they share, and because you're doing that, it makes this program so much better. Julie said name of the book. So again, it is Food Rules. It has a P, like a snap P or whatever right there. Food Rules by Michael Pollan. And it's just an easy read, simple things. And I just like it. It doesn't change everything that I do, but it has influenced a lot of decisions. Joe said, that's what I was going to say, glimmering. Oh, Carol, thank you. Carol said it was her favorite program. So we're going to thank VIATRIS for the space and time for this, and of course for MS Views and News, because without you, we would not have this program. We'll move forward. So I love consistency and predictability, because there's so much of our life that is not consistent and that is not predictable. But one thing that is predictable is I am not saying goodbye. I'm going to say I'll see you later. And I want you to know that I will be here next month for the mental wellness chat, and I will be here with you. And I'm going to be here to help you guys help each other. So until I see you again, have a beautiful evening.